But I have a saying that I try to get my team to understand, and that is excellence never goes out of business. And if you are an excellent person, if you're an excellent leader, if you're an excellent husband, spouse, father, whatever you are, if you're excellent at that, it never goes out of business, no matter what happens. And I think the businesses that fail, or the people that fail, or that don't achieve what they want, is because in some area of their life, they choose to not be excellent. And whether they don't want to admit that or not, it is a fact. You know, they start coming in a little bit later to work. They start not putting in the effort they put in at the beginning. We can see this a lot in relationships. You know, at the beginning, it's, you know, flowers every week for your significant other. And then the next thing you know, 10 years later, they haven't gotten any flowers. And then they wonder why there's like a breakdown in the communication in the relationship. But I think that if you develop this thought process that I'm going to be excellent in everything that I do, I'm going to be excellent in the way that I communicate with my team, with my relationships, the way that I communicate with my superiors and subordinates, the way that I communicate with outside vendors and strangers. If you become excellent in everything that you do, it'll never go out of business.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we talk all things leadership, and a lot of times sports comes up, and how all of us can become better at who we already are and find those pieces of wisdom and insight that only conversations like the one I'm going to have today can give us. I have a wonderful guest lined up. He is coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia, and his name is Luis Scott. Luis, are you ready for kickoff?
I'm ready. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here because I know you've got a great story that is going to resonate with listeners. So team, here's some things I know about Luis. He is a respected attorney and consultant. He is the owner of Bader Scott Injury Lawyers and 8-figure firm consulting, specializing in helping legal professionals optimize and grow their practices. Over his 20 years as a legal professional, he has been recognized by various legal organizations and was managing partner of a successful law firm with almost 200 employees. He was telling me in the pre-chat that he recently launched a leadership academy. He's going to talk about that and why that matters, and share with us some tips and insights about developing our own leadership practices based on his experiences. So, Luis, let's get right into it. Tell us your story about when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? What was going on in your life? And how did those experiences play into what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got a call to leadership when I was really young. I remember the first time that I experienced an opportunity to lead was actually in high school when I was on a baseball team. And I was kind of like the raw guy who got everyone up and got them ready and motivated to go on the field and play their best game. I ended up becoming team captain by my senior year. But really, this drive came from I have an amazing father, and not everyone is blessed to say that. And I grew up with a man that exemplifies and exudes leadership in every walk of life, both as a father, as a professional, as a husband. And I just wanted to be like him. I wanted to imitate him, and I wanted to lead like him and influence people. And one of the things that he used to say is that his level of leadership was not based on how many people he led, but rather on the friends he left behind. And to me, that just resonated. And I started to think about leadership as more of a moment of relationship building versus a moment of being an authority and, getting people to do something for you. but really it was just all about connection and relationship building. And so in high school, I started feeling this pull to go into leadership, and it's carried me my entire life. And in fact, in anything that I do, it always seems that I get involved in the leadership aspect of it. And so that was really the entry point for me. I was probably about 13, 14 years old when it happened.
Okay. Well, thank you for, first of all, highlighting your dad, who sounds amazing. And you're right. Not everybody is so fortunate to have a parent, whether mother, father, or both, who exemplifies leadership skills. And how would you say that playing organized sports like baseball played into you honing your skills as a leader? I mean, yes, you're a rah-rah guy, but that's great. But there's more to leadership, we both know, than just being the great cheerleader on the side, cheering everybody on.
I think that's organized sports. What it does is it provides an opportunity for you to see that you have to be a great leader. You have to have a plan of action, a plan of attack for the people that you're leading. And I had a really great high school baseball coach as well, who exemplified discipline, who exemplified the team mentality, and who exemplified us working as a unit. And so those were probably three things that I use in my leadership, which is having a plan, working as a unit, and making sure that we're all guided by this team aspect. And so being in organized sports, what it does, if you're a good teammate, what it does is it helps you develop all those skills. Like, how do I become a better teammate? How do I serve my fellow person, my fellow man, my fellow player? How do I actually execute on a plan that is more than just about me? It's about the entire organization. And so that was some of the greatest things that I was learning as I was growing up in the baseball system was, how do I actually become a better teammate? And what I learned is that you become a better teammate and a better leader when you're willing to serve other people and not just make it all about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's fast forward to today. Quite a leap from going, you didn't talk about your academics at all in high school, but certainly what drew you to becoming a lawyer? Of all the things you could have chosen, what was it about the law that you said, that's for me?
Well, that's actually a funny story because I'd never thought I was smart enough to be a lawyer, to be honest.
Interesting.
I grew up and my dad used to tell me, because I argued a lot and I always looked for the fight, the confrontation. And he would say, you're going to be a comedian or you're going to be a lawyer. Because I was kind of a jokester. I still am. That's how people know me around the office. But he said, you're going to be a comedian or a lawyer. But because I didn't know I was smart enough, I never actually anticipated going into the legal field until one day, a mentor of mine who has now become a great friend, he was a judge, he gave me an internship at the courthouse over the summer. And in one of those internships, I went to go work with a criminal defense attorney. And I walked in there, and I won't say the entire story because it's kind of long, but I walked in there and I saw him get paid about $2,500 for a fee. And so he was going to be representing a client. He got paid $2,500, and I saw him pack up his bags, and he was walking out the door. And I said, where are you going? I mean, it's the beginning of the day. And he says, well, I was only trying to make $1,500 per day. I made $2,500, so I'm gone. And that was the moment where I realized not only did I want to be just a lawyer, I wanted to be a law firm owner, and I wanted to own a business.
Yeah.
And so I was 19 years old, and that motivated me. And I left that internship that summer. And I remember telling my family, I'm going to law school. I'm going to own a law firm one day. And so I went to law school actually just to own a law firm. That was my dream.
Interesting. That's so not the usual path.
No, it's not.
So you're really more of an entrepreneur, Luis, I would say.
I am an entrepreneur at heart, by discipline, by passion. And I just happened to stumble into the legal field.
Okay. So you own a law firm now, and you also do consulting work through 8-Figure Firm Consulting, where you help other law practices optimize and grow their practices. What have you seen? You've been in this business for 20 years or more, and we're going back to the early 2000s. And everybody listening here knows, and that includes you and me, the world has changed so much in the time, particularly because of the rise of tech. Let's just be honest, the internet, the smartphone, social media, all these tools that have been developed in the cloud, that we all rely on every single day and use all the time. Talk to us about being a leader in a very traditional field. Okay. And I realize that ownership is ownership, whether it's a baseball team or a law firm or a bagel store, right? You know, there's some fundamentals that cross, doesn't matter what it is. But as far as your journey as a leader, how has this immense amount of change impacted the way you lead, Luis, when you look back to when you first started out to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, you have to adapt, obviously, through the seasons of time. But I have a saying that I try to get my team to understand, and that is excellence never goes out of business. And if
Yes,
you are an
nice.
excellent person, if you're an excellent leader, if you're an excellent husband, spouse, father, whatever you are, if you're excellent at that, it never goes out of business, no matter what happens. And I think the businesses that fail, or the people that fail, or that don't achieve what they want, is because in some area of their life, they choose to not be excellent. And whether they don't want to admit that or not, it is a fact. You know, they start coming in a little bit later to work. They start not putting in the effort they put in at the beginning. We can see this a lot in relationships. You know, at the beginning, it's, you know, flowers every week for your significant other, and then the next thing you know, 10 years later, they haven't gotten any flowers, and then they wonder why there's like a breakdown in the communication in the relationship. But I think that if you develop this thought process that I'm going to be excellent in everything that I do, I'm going to be excellent in the way that I communicate with my team, with my relationships, the way that I communicate with my superiors and subordinates, the way that I communicate with outside vendors and strangers. If you become excellent in everything that you do, it'll never go out of business. And so that's what I decided. This actually, and I do reference my dad a lot because he taught me so much. And I didn't know at the time he was teaching me these things, but he would always say, if you develop the reputation of being an early riser, you can sleep until noon. And I didn't know what that meant. Today, I know what that means. And that is, when you get the reputation of being an early riser, nobody will ever question you if you're not there in the morning.
Interesting.
But you have to develop that reputation first.
Yeah. Wow. That's really fascinating. And what I'm hearing, you know, between the lines here is that all the changes in technology and all that stuff really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, circumstances are going to change, and it's what you hold inside, what values you show up with day after day, week after week, year after year. And having a mantra like excellence never goes out of business is a very powerful statement. And so let's talk about you opening a leadership academy. What made you decide that you wanted to add that to your portfolio of things that you're doing? And tell us more about what it is and what it does for people.
When I was helping law firms build their business, and what I realized is that the reason that many businesses, whether it's a law firm or any kind of business, failed to continue to grow is because they haven't learned the art of scaling their leadership. Because maybe they're not really good leaders to begin with. Maybe they started their business or started their professional career with a lot of grit and a lot of hard work, and they work 16-hour days, right? And you hear this a lot. You see this on social media. I'm grinding 16-hour days and all this stuff. And all of that, by the way, can lead to financial success. It's not going to lead to a really great quality of life, but it can lead to financial success. What it doesn't do, the grind, is not scalable. You can't teach enough people to grind 16 hours because there's not enough people who are willing to do that kind of grind. Right. And so in order to grow your organization, and I have this theory, and I use this in my assumptions when we're making projections, people who work for you are only going to work at about 70 to 80% of what you put in because you're the owner. So they're not going to do ownership work unless you plan on making them part owner. That's the only way that works. And so as I realized that grit and grind is not going to be enough for growing your business, and you needed more leadership, I knew that I had to fill the gap because many organizations, whether law firms or not, do not have an intentional program for helping people develop their people, or helping them grow into leadership. And so we decided to prepare an academy. And it first started off as a 13-lesson course. Nothing super special. It was just like, here are the 13 principles you should have for being a leader and some of the things that you should, think about and do. And we had such an overwhelming response that we turned it into a 36-week course in 3 semesters. And it has now been attended by over 200 people in the last year, and making huge impact in individual organizations as the individual who's not an owner rises in their leadership. And now the owner can focus on really scaling the leadership, which is what drives organizational growth. So that's where the academy came from. And it's just a matter of helping people grow as individuals first, and then professionals second. And when you do that, you end up rising the entire organization.
Yeah, you do. So where did you launch that? I mean, was it word of mouth? Did you do a big online thing? What was your approach to getting the word out that this exists?
So it was primarily word of mouth. And then we did a little bit of ad spend on social media. It's not a primary function of what I do.
Right.
Even though it sounds like, 200 people sounds like a lot of people, but it's not a primary function of what I do. The law firms we represent now make up about 2,500 employees. So it's a very small part of what we do, but we do market online, on social media, and word of mouth. And every semester we accept anywhere between 10 and 20 new participants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. I mean, congrats on that. And
Thank you.
definitely needed because unless you're fortunate enough to have, like you did, a dad or a mom or parents or a coach or several teachers who acknowledge in you the potential for leadership. I mean, I have lots of friends who got leadership skills through scouts, organized sports, scouts. Sometimes in school, there are roles that people can play. Where there isn't a formal track in school that's leadership, right? It's
Right.
like there are young people that take on roles that are leadership roles, and then the majority don't. But then you enter the workforce, and I say if people listen to the end of every episode in my outro, I firmly believe that developing your leadership skills it's a survival skill for today's world, because there's just so much that we have to filter and be able to make decisions about in a way that in no other time in human history have we been bombarded with so much information, with so many options. And so if you don't have those fundamental leadership skills in place, you're just going to be a victim of drifting around and getting bounced, from one thing to the next, and never really feeling like you're accomplishing anything. And I'm sure that you have witnessed that in your career, Luis.
Yes.
You have a podcast too called The Guts and Glory Show. Tell us about that and what that's about.
Yeah, so the Guts and Glory Show is just an opportunity for me to share the ideas that are in my head. I always say that we have so many ideas, and if we forget to write them down, nobody ever hears about them. We don't even remember them, right? And a long time ago, I had a mentor who said, every time you have an idea, write it down on a piece of paper, and maybe one day it'll be useful, or you'll remember it for another day. And so for a while, I had a podcast where I was interviewing guests, and it became a little bit too taxing for me to find guests to be on the show, just because of my schedule and my travel schedule and just all my commitments. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start a show where it's a solo show. And every once in a while, I'm going to have a guest if it's easy to find the guest, but I'm not going to be like super aggressive in getting guests, only because of it had nothing to do with the guest, but with my own ability to do it. And so the Guts and Glory Show is really me teaching people on how to develop themselves as individuals, professionals, how to have the guts to succeed. Because I think that whether you're an entrepreneur or not, if you're going to live a life that is meaningful in any way, you have to have guts. And one of the books that I recommend any person read is the book No Ego. And Cy Wakeman is the writer, and she wrote that you're 8 courageous decisions away from completely changing your life. And I firmly believe that it may be less than 8, but let's just say that it is 8. Sometimes we just need to hear that one thing that sparks us into that courageous mode. But if you can just make those 8 courageous decisions, you are literally just steps away from being the leader, the entrepreneur, the owner, whatever you want. You're like 8 steps away from being completely different in your life and in your future.
Wow. I have not heard of that book, No Ego. And who is the author again?
Cy Wakeman. Yeah,
Okay.
phenomenal book. And she has another book called reality-based leadership, which is, she has a leadership institute, and just absolutely love both of those books.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because resources like this can be so amazing. And I would love for you to share a story about a time when you made a really courageous decision, Louise, where there was so much on the line that you really were terrified. And I'm sure you have at least one, because anybody who's a leader does.
I honestly, I have many of those. And I don't say that in any way pridefully, because many times these courageous decisions, you don't want to experience them. Like, we don't necessarily want to go out and be like super courageous, because courage is actually acting in the face of fear, and nobody wants to experience fear. So most people, when they say, I want to be courageous, what they don't realize is what they're actually asking for is to face a lot of fear. And so if you're out there and you're like, I want to be courageous, understand that the universe will allow you that opportunity, but fear is coming. So just get ready for that. And I have a lot of stories like this, and many of them were accidental. But one of the most courageous things I did was I went and played Division I baseball after high school. I got a college scholarship, and I was super proud of that. I wanted to go to the pros, but I was playing for a coach that was a great coach as it related to the game, but what just wasn't a great connector relationally.
Sure.
And I'm using that to be super kind, but he was the kind of coach that would drop F-bombs left and right, speak to you in a very aggressive way, and he would tell you it's only because I love you, but it felt like very abusive love. And so I had a decision to make. Was I going to transfer schools? Was I going to stay there under that environment? And the only way I could transfer schools was to go to a lower division. So I had to go to Division II, or I had to ask for a waiver because back in the day, you couldn't just, now they have the transfer portal. You just go to another school, no big deal. But back in the day, you had to get a waiver to transfer to another Division I school. And so I decided I was going to ask him for a waiver. And I went in there, and I was scared to death. I was, 19, 20 years old. And, this man was very aggressive in the way that he talked to people. Again, he never did anything physically or anything like that. I would never accuse him of anything like that, but he was just very aggressive. And I went in there and I told him, I said, you are going to give me a waiver, or you're going to release me from my Division I responsibility to the school. And he did curse me out. And then he said he'll do it. But it was a very, very, very scary decision that I had to make. But here's the end of this story, which is actually really phenomenal. And we never can connect the dots looking forward. We always connect the dots looking backwards. But it was that decision that led me to the University of West Georgia. And it was my time at University of West Georgia that I met the judge who gave me the internship. And the judge who gave me the internship got me a job at a law firm. And that law firm was the one that paid for my law school. And that's when I became the managing partner, eventually started my own firm. And now this major enterprise came. So when I look back, the dots were connecting, but I didn't know it at the time. And it just took that one courageous decision to make it all happen.
Wow. And so on point about connecting the dots. I think Steve Jobs is famous for saying that it can only look back to connect. But it's so interesting how a story like that it's universal, where you're terrified to go do what you know you have to do. It's the right thing to do. And I think more often than not, it turns out to be really amazing.
Absolutely.
You look back and you sit and you wonder, why was I so afraid? But it's stepping into the unknown. You just don't know when you're up against that terror barrier, what's going to happen. And even as we get older and have more experiences under our belt, I don't know if it gets any easier, but you at least have perspective, and you can tell yourself, you know what, you've been here before, and sure, you don't know what the outcome of this is going to be, but trust, right? Would you say that I would love for you to share what you think are like the top 3 to 4 most important characteristics of being a leader today. You're getting at, trust your gut, obviously guts and glory, right? You got to have guts, but you also have to trust your gut. But what are some other things, Luis, that you've experienced that you say absolutely 100%, no argument at all? These have to be in place.
To be a great leader, you do have to have guts. And I do think that has a lot to do with you succeeding. But there's 2 primary things that I teach my leadership team and I teach people that work with me. And that's you have to lead with love and you have to show grace. And I think working with people requires you to lead in a way that is not, that people are not accustomed to. People get thrown aback when you lead with love and show grace, when you genuinely have a desire for connection. I always tell the story that the people closest to me, I know what they want in life. I know the house they want, the cars they want. I know the money they want to make. I know the kind of life they want to have. I know when one of my leaders, their primary love is to see their daughter play softball and to be a participant in that and be able to get off in time to be able to make that happen and have the resources to allow her daughter to play in travel softball. Like I know my team that well. And so you have to love people to get to know them. If you don't love them, it's hard to really want to get to know them. So I think to be a great leader, you have to know your people. And I think you have to show grace because people will disappoint you. And one of the things that I've always heard, I've had several mentors tell me this, is that if you have a lot of expectations of people, you will be disappointed a lot. But if you show a lot of grace to people, you'll never be disappointed because you're always in a posture of giving. And that gift that you're giving is grace. Like you made a mistake, I'm going to show you grace, but let's walk through why that mistake is a problem and how can we fix it. And so to me, those are the 2 primary things that I do. And what I have found is that is reciprocated. And I have a really beautiful story about that reciprocation. And that was one day I show up to the office and I was very sick, but I couldn't cancel all of my meetings. And, I had been pouring out to my team for a while and I couldn't cancel my meetings. I had to go through my meetings and I show up to the office. My team saw that I was sick and I didn't ask for anything. I didn't ask for water. I didn't ask for anything. And I finished my first meeting and I hear a knock on the door and in come several members of my team. One had gone to Starbucks and got me one of those medicine ball drinks. One went to the store and got me cough drops and got me medicine and got me Dayquil and got me that. The other one brought me water and brought me something to eat. And what I realized is that when you lead with love and show grace, people will reciprocate that. Not always, but people will reciprocate that. And I believe that it was in that moment that the bond of the relationship between me and these team members was strengthened because it was the moment where I said, I will serve you and you will serve me and we will do this together. And that made all the difference in the world for me coming into work.
That's a terrific story. Thank you for sharing that. And also for having those tenets as well, lead with love and show grace. Not easy. Not easy
the
to
hardest
do.
thing you will ever do. Yeah, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do.
Yeah, but the rewards, it's interesting that the more giving, I don't know if it was Zig Ziglar who said it, but one of those guys, back in the day used to talk about when you give everybody else what they want, you get way more than you could ever want in return.
Man. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It really is, I think what makes a difference. And also you talked about that one coach that you had who was a good coach, probably from a technical standpoint and yet was limited in, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the aggressive nature of some leaders and coaches that there is definitely that vein of leadership out there where yelling and dropping profanity and stuff is very much a part of that style. And it's very intense. And it's very, I don't know. I think it can be effective to a degree, but I think that it's like anything else. There's kind of a balance between that toughness, but also the compassion and the ability to put your arm around somebody and say, listen, this didn't go the way we thought, but let's see what we can do to fix it.
Yeah, I mean the thing is you can be negative in that style, and there's a quote, and I can't remember the quote exactly, but the quote was something like, "Things are built greater when you build people up versus tearing people down." And
Yes.
so I've just taken the perspective: could criticizing my team and showing them how they did something wrong, and then teaching them how to do it right, be effective? Yes, it can. Or I can just love on them and continuously praise them and give them what they need and be a friend and be a connector. And it's very likely we'll probably build just as great or if not greater organization. And to me, I just chose the second way because I like sleeping at night. I never want to come into the office thinking that people view me as a jerk or view me as, this harsh person who's hard to be around. That's not the reputation that I want to have.
Yeah. And again, that self-awareness, which is another quality that I think good leaders have, is your ability to reflect and recognize that one, you're not superhuman, so you are going to get sick sometimes. I'm
Yes.
wondering. I mean, these days, do you still go into the office if you're sick just because you feel the obligation? You want to you show up no matter what, or are you less likely to do that and say, you know what, I trust my team; they got this for me?
I don't go into the office because I don't trust my team. I just like being in the office.
Yeah.
That's like, it has literally nothing to do with them, whether, I trust them or not. I work from home Monday and Fridays, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I just like to show up.
Yeah.
I love the saying, visibility is my responsibility. And I like to show up for my team. I like to be visible, and I like for them to know that I am here for them if they need me. And if they don't need me, then cool. I'm here, I'm hanging out and doing the things that I have to do.
Yeah, that I like that. You have a lot of these good lines. Visibility is my responsibility. No, I think that's how we remember things.
Yes.
That's awesome. And so I'd love for you to describe for listeners, Luis, what is your professional development practice like that keeps as I think it was Stephen Covey talks about, keeping your saw sharp? How do you stay sharp as a leader? What are some of the things you practice regularly?
So what I practice is probably very extreme, and I don't know if most people need to do what I'm about to say, but this is what I do because it's worked for me, and it keeps me in a constant state of positivity, especially outwardly, even if inwardly I'm not feeling very positive. The first thing I do is I have an app that lets you read a book in 20 minutes or less, and I read one of those a day.
And what app is that?
It's called Blink List.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so it summarizes a book in 20 minutes. You can hear it so that somebody will read it to you, or you can read it yourself. So in 20 minutes, I get a book every single day. The second thing I do is I try to listen to something motivational on either Spotify or YouTube every single day for about 20 to 30 minutes, usually in my drive into work. And so I want to be constantly in this positive state of mind. Exercise is really important. It not only makes you tired enough to sleep, but the sleep then re-energizes you for the next day. And so I think exercise is a really important part of professional development. But the fourth thing that I do, and this is the extreme one, because I've had people push back on this, and I totally get the pushback, but I still think it works. And that is, I do something called the 52 and 52 challenge, which is you read 52 books in 52 weeks. And you develop the discipline of not audiobook. You develop the discipline of sitting down to read a book in 7-day period of time and doing it for 52 straight weeks. And I'm so confident that this works for your professional and development that if you do this within 36 months, you'll double your income, no matter what it is that you're making. And I've done this before for my business. We've had skyrocketing growth in our business every single year. And I think it's because of this commitment to constantly be growing. And I never want to be the lid that prevents my personal growth or the organizational growth. And so I am in a constant state of wanting to expand myself so that others can also grow. Okay,
so you consume the book with the Blink List, but then you also once a week are reading an entire book, physically reading it.
Not well in a week, but not. I don't read the whole book in one sitting. I take
no. But within so a 7-day period, you consume a book.
That's exactly right.
52 times because 52 weeks a year. Okay.
So that leads you to 365 summarized books and 52 actual books.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how do you pick the books?
So generally speaking, I'm feeling a certain theme, and I will go and I'll buy 10 books on that theme. So if I'm feeling like I need to, I'm feeling a little weak in my, let's say, time management, I'll go buy 10 time management books, and that's what I'll focus on for that period. Or if I'm weak on crucial conversations, I'll go buy 10 books on how to have crucial conversations. Recently, I wanted to start working in investing in real estate. It's something I've never really done because I've invested so much in my two businesses. And I actually have a third business. I also own a barbershop, but I wanted to, yeah. So I wanted to invest in my businesses, and I've never invested in real estate. So I went and I downloaded 10 books on real estate. And so that's what I'm reading right now. And so whatever's kind of calling me, I'll pick that theme and I'll do that for about anywhere between 6 and 10 weeks.
Okay. I like that. I like the thematic approach. I'm curious, do you notice, I think this is rhetorical.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of patterns do you notice? I mean, so let's say you got the 10 books on real estate and you're reading them. Are they all contemporary? Are they from different eras? I mean, do you pay attention to those things, or you go and you say, these are the 10 and see what happens?
Yeah. So what I've noticed is that people shop by title, and that's how I shop. And so I pick the book based on the title. I don't even look at what time period. I read a book one time on investing, and then when I looked into the book, it was written in the 1970s. I was like, yeah, the stock market's probably changed a little bit since then. So I don't know if this is going to be the relevant, but it still was good information. What I've noticed primarily is that at the beginning of that theme, so let's say I picked 10 books, the first 2 or 3 books, I'm super excited. I'm reading it cover to cover, every word. I'm just grabbing every word. I want it so bad, Then the next series of books, I'm having to really push myself to read them. And then the last 2 to 3 books on that topic, I'm exhausted. They're saying the same thing anyway. I don't want to read every single, yeah. And so, but it's in those where you solidify the thought, where you solidify what's being taught. And so you have to go kind of through that whole process to really get it in your head.
Okay. The fascinating. I've never heard anybody, do what you do with this. I've had conversations on this show over the years with people who have talked about reading 15 minutes a day. Make sure that you do that, or and then you'll read X number of books a year, right? If you do that, because it doesn't take in 15 to 20 minutes you can read a chapter. Well, so by 8, if the book has 8 chapters or 12 chapters, within a 2-week span, you've read a book times, but the 52 to 52, what do people push back on you? What are they saying that that doesn't work, Luis? Or what is their issue with that?
Generally speaking, what they'll say is that it's better to read 12 books that you get all the information than to read 52 books. But I always say it's a supermarket approach. You go to the supermarket, you're not going to eat everything in the supermarket. You're just going to get the things that you want to feed your soul at the time, right? And the books are like that. If you read the book cover to cover, you may be reading a terrible book. And so I would rather create the discipline of reading and just read a bunch of books and just take away what I thought was useful from that one book. And so I may read 52 books and only get 52 things from it, but I got one thing from each book. And to me, that's a win. And so other people believe if you just read 12 books, that's enough. The second pushback that I get, if people are like, you don't have to read, you got to just take action. Okay, but some people are struggling with taking action and they need somebody to inspire them, and they need a book that can inspire them. Books are essentially mentors. And a person who has written a book has written something that you would otherwise not get from their head unless you knew them. And since I don't know every single person that I read books from, the only way I can get their information is through a book. And so, but they say you just got to take massive action. I have found that there are a lot of people who are unable to take massive action because of fear, doubt, insecurity, and a book could be the thing that unlocks them for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other argument on massive action is if you don't know what you're taking massive action on, what's the point? You're just you're just massively acting.
Yeah, imagine me,
No direction.
imagine me just going and taking massive action on buying real estate with no clue on how to buy real estate. It's funny because I was recently looking at properties because now I'm turning into an investment guru. Haven't bought anything, but I'm like an investment guru. And my brother is actually a real estate investor, and I talked to him, so I do have an additional resource. But I was like looking at something, and I was like, "Oh, this looks like a great property." I sent it to my brother, and he's like, "That is a terrible property. Do not buy that. That is like, the market cap is not right. The commitment's not right. The payment's not right. You're not going to get enough." I was like, "Oh, okay. I need to read more books then."
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, at some point you do have to take massive action,
Yes.
right? I mean, we're not negating that massive action. But I agree with you in terms of sometimes the book is the spark that gets people to move in the direction because they picked up an idea, or the writer was able to explain a concept in a way that finally they get it. And they're like, no, now I know what to do. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I certainly have, where sometimes, we have periods of time in our lives when things aren't all lined up and the machine is just humming along great. Like there's times when it's like, ooh, something isn't quite right. I'm not really sure what it is. And you're in that space of searching, learning, kind of fumbling around a little bit. And then you find a book, or you see a video, or you hear a podcast like this, or you go to Spotify and find somebody who's a motivational speaker, and some like one thing they say, or you read, or you hear, and it's like, that's it. And it was so simple and so small. But if you hadn't trained yourself to be on the path of personal development and personal growth, you never would have got it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's sometimes you need, and I love the word you said spark. Sometimes you just need that spark to get you moving in the right direction. And that's what it's been for me, is that if you're constantly igniting the flame on a daily basis to get you moving, it's more likely that you will take that massive action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, if you don't stoke the fire, it eventually goes out. And then you have to start all over again. And if you've ever been camping, or you've ever been somewhere where you build a fire, you know that it's a lot easier to keep an existing fire going than to have to start all over again, because you've already got those coals burning, that heat. So really, I love your approach to your personal growth. And also, you clearly sound like you're an amazing boss, for lack of a better term, an owner, and a leader, Luis. And for people who'd like to learn more about you, where do you hang out online?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on all social media platforms, but if they want to reach me or contact me, you can find me at luisscottjr.com. So LuissCottJR.com. They can get my newest book, which actually was released yesterday. It Has to Hurt. And it talks about my journey of overcoming struggles, and just came out yesterday. And I was so happy to see today it was on the Amazon bestseller list, which is kind of cool to see. But
congrats.
Thank you. And you can find me there. You can find me on social media. And you can contact me on that site.
That's cool. So it's called, your book is It Has to Hurt?
Yes, it's called It Has to Hurt.
Okay. Well, team, there'll be a link to connect with Luis on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com, as well as a link to his book. And I'll also put a link to his podcast, because you might find his inspiration useful to you as you're going through your day when you want a different voice in your head. And they really can help sometimes get us out of our own way.
I agree.
So, and as we round things off today, I have two final questions for you. First one is, I know you've shared some books already, but are there a couple more books, Luis, that have been instrumental in your leadership journey, of all the ones you have read? Because you are obviously extremely well read. Are there a couple that you go to again and again, or that you just consider these are special?
Yeah, there's one specifically that I've read probably 10 times, and it's called The Four Agreements. And
I love that book. Yeah.
The reason that's special to me is because I've realized that in leadership, you have to be very, very good at not taking things personally.
Yes.
And so that to me is a constant reminder that what people do to us, say to us, and the way we experience people is not a reflection of us, but rather a reflection of them. And that keeps me grounded when I'm faced with challenging, relational issues. But the second book that I would probably recommend is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And I just love the law of the lid, where he talks about kind of our growth is limited by the lid of your weakest leader. And so if you're in an organization, you run an organization, have a business, just know that the business will be capped at the leadership level. And I think that's a reminder to me to always be growing.
Always be growing. Love it. Love it. Love it. And as an avid sports fan, obviously a former baseball player, and we talked about this in the pre-chat, that you like the Atlanta Braves. Do you have a football team, Luis, that you enjoy during the fall season?
So I am an all Atlanta fan. I love baseball. I love the Braves. I love Atlanta United. I love the Hawks, even though they disappoint me every year. I love the Falcons, even though they disappoint me every year. But I'm also a huge Georgia Bulldog fan. So.
Okay, so you've got the college and the NFL covered, plus the other sports. Well, you are in a great sports town. There's no question. Atlanta's got a lot going on, and you have a lot going on, Luis. You've been so fun to talk to today and inspirational to me. And I know Team PYP got a lot out of what you shared today. Some amazing tips about personal growth and challenging ourselves to continue to get better through reading, through listening, through watching. And the tenets that we come up with, I'm going to steal a couple of ones you got, and also some great book recommendations. So, thank you so much for spending an hour with me and Team PYP today. It's been just a real pleasure.
Absolutely, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes, but leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.